Bill. Well, here we are live streaming. Hello, everybody. Live stream. Let's check it out. Check it out. Check it out. Check it out. From the land of sky blue water comes a drink that's fresh and clean. That's a I'm sharing this now just for future reference. That's what we're going to be looking at today, hopefully. 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 Okay, that doesn't work. Ah, that's a fish. That was a rendition of a song, as originally I heard it originally. Anyway, from Taj Mahal. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Taj Mahal, but he was a dude and a half. Let's see. Yeah, he was a dude. I thought okay. A man with a very small head. That's a little better. This guy. right here. Turin Turambar. And you may be wondering to yourself, hey, what's going on? And you'd be right. Because I'm just waiting for my co-host here, goofing off until I do read my own articles. And saying silly things. Hopefully today is Wednesday. And I was originally going to be looking at.
Hello, hello.
Hark, a voice.
I'm here.
There he is.
It's
All right,
me.
stop share. Yeah, I'm going to redo the share. Okay, I'm going to try.
Okay.
How come?
A pretty badass picture of Turin with the gosh, what's that called? The what's it called helmet? Is it Sutton
Yeah.
Who? Is that from Sutton Who?
Which?
Uh well, it looks like the face mask of one of those old
Oh,
Anglo-Saxon.
yeah. The helmet.
Yeah.
I think so. Let me take a look and see.
Sutton Who
Oh, yeah, definitely.
by Somerset.
It's a dragon helm that they've
That's
got.
totally inspired by that.
Yeah. Most pictures I've seen are inspired by that
Yeah.
because I guess that's what we have.
Yeah.
Well, how are you?
I have no idea. I have we had 6 hours, I think. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, 6 hours yesterday of straight back-to-back thesis defenses on Zoom, half-hour piece, and I'm about ready to pluck my eyeballs out.
Samson.
Yeah. And then today I've had a couple punctuated with enough time to like go grab lunch, like make lunch, eat lunch, come back, do another one. And I don't know whether I'm coming or going. I guess that's the long and short of it.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel
Is
it's like
that?
I feel great. It's like drinking. It's like drinking a
Mm,
lot. It's like I
hmm
feel fine, and then you walk into the wall. It's just you know, mentally, I feel like I'm okay. Or like when you're over 40 and you get sick, I think I can push through. And you just really the better thing is to lie down for a while.
You have more today?
I know I've had the last one today, just
Oh, I
previous.
see. So your
Friday.
binge is over.
Yeah.
The binge is over, the battle won.
Indeed.
So I will say here on live stream YouTube that I can't stand contemporary church music.
It's not even contemporary anymore. It's vintage.
Yeah, it's like
Vintage
1970s and
church music.
80s. Oh, all the new
Yeah.
stuff.
Smells like mothballs, baby.
Yeah, that's right. It smells like Teen Spirit. Yeah. The the older I get too, I'm like, I'm not vintage. I'm not new. That's not new. Why are we still doing it?
Yeah, I know.
There it is.
Right.
Oh well. Okay, so today I thought it would be a good idea to look at Turin Turambar. I went over this story again. Right, I know exactly. So let's look at this car wreck. Huh? I went over the story again, and I saw a couple of videos. There's a really good synopsis. Let me see if I can find it here. It's a really good synopsis for this story, which is at YouTube. Ah, here it is. Okay.
YouTuber. Those YouTubers out there.
YouTuber.
Tuber boober.
And I'm not going to play it because I don't want to steal somebody else's well worked on content. But I will make reference to it. This is I thought a really good version of it from this guy, Nerd of the Rings. He's got a lot of good content up. He does all summaries of all sorts of things. So I watched a summary of the dragons the other day and the War of Wrath and fun stuff like that he's got up. But this one of Turin Turambar is really good because he uses artwork as well as some AI stuff, and it works pretty well. He puts this together pretty well. There's a lot of good AI things out there too. There's a lot of crap, but there's a lot of AI versions of Silmarillion content, which I thought was pretty neat. It does
That's
give
cool.
a vision for what could be made into a movie.
When AI slop is out doing Peter Jackson,
It is, yes, and
or
apparently also
Amazon
doing.
as the great abomination. Let the reader understand.
Yes, right, exactly. The abomination desecrations. Um, it's also doing Christopher Nolan apparently too, so is what I understand.
What?
Hmm. Well, Mr. Nolan with his most recent addition to Homer's corpus. Only he takes the corpus and leaves the Homer.
Oh no.
This Odyssey movie apparently. Kind of, but I haven't seen it, so how can I make the judgment aside from hearing the trickling rumors of war that keep coming back from the front?
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Wow, that's about right. Hollywood does Homer.
Hollywood does Homer. Poor Homer. Oh
I
man.
know, poor Homer.
Right.
It's been done so many times.
It's like that scene in Pulp Fiction. Never mind, I'll just leave that be.
Yeah. So anyway, talking about the travels of Turin Turambar, I thought that this one from Nerd of the Rings is a good synopsis. What they have written up at the Tolkien Gateway is pretty cool for the synopsis. And as you mentioned in the photograph here or the painting here, whatever it is, by Elena Kukanova, 2020. She obviously based, make sure I get her pronouns right. She obviously bases the helmet that he's wearing, the dragon helmet that he's carrying there,
Mhm.
on the Sutton Hoo helmet that was found. Let's see if I can draw that up.
I'll just
The
quick
Sutton,
drop the link here in chat. Whoop. You can click it open.
oh, for the Sutton Hoo helmet?
Yeah, there it is right there. You're just as
Yeah,
fast.
British
Fast on the draw.
Museum.
Look at
Funny,
that.
that's the helm. The reconstruction is actually better than the helm. The helm's just
Yeah,
some old
totally.
flaky metal stuff.
Just some junk, man.
Yeah, this is call that a helmet?
Well, that's
No,
not
but
even the helmet. Those are bits of the helmet on
yeah,
a plain base, right? Because that's all that survived.
yeah, yeah. But they were able to reconstruct it enough to be able to make
Yeah.
some idea of what they actually constructed. And it's actually quite fantastic. I don't mean to belittle it.
It is.
This
It is. I
dragon
worked really
here
hard
on
on
the bridge. Yeah.
that.
Igor, Igor, you worked very hard on the helmet. Good job. Um, the dragon on him goes down the nose,
Yes.
the bridge of the nose, which is kind of neat. And then you've got the spine, I guess, on the back. But
Very
it's just a really
faithful
neat
piece.
little thing, little bits here and there.
So
But
badass.
there's a reconstruction of it actually, which I think is more glorious because it gives you more of a sense of what this one looked like in its heyday. There it is. Quite
Nice.
spectacular, really.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I'd wear that to battle.
Yeah. Well, I'd wear that to parties.
Or to, well, yeah, I was gonna say, or just the grocery store.
Right. Exactly. You had to go to a party, and face Glaurung, and you're like, haha, I've got a mask on. Can't
There we
touch
go,
me.
man.
Do can you imagine doing your dissertation reviews with this mask on the whole time? Be like, please go on.
With superimposed settings, I could do that. I could just,
I suppose you could.
you know,
I suppose you could.
activate Sutton Hoo mode. It'll just kind of float over your face as you talk.
Yeah, you'd probably get fired.
Yeah. It's English philology. So, I mean, they're just being culturally relevant.
Yeah, that's right. Culturally sensitive, culturally accurate, as I say in Moana.
Culturally accurate.
Culturally accurate.
That's
Yeah.
right.
It's
Ah,
important.
I should start asking the questions in Old English.
In Old English. Ooh, that would be stunning. What?
That'd be badass. What? And they wouldn't get the joke. That's the damn
No,
thing.
they wouldn't get the joke at all.
They'd be like, okay, so we got this strange German professor.
Yeah. Right. You speak in a language I do not understand. Yeah. Okay, so back to our, so what was our
Yes.
subject? Right, Turin. So Turin, okay,
Be
let's
or
do
be
this.
Aragorn, not Turin. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. So Turin is what do they call it? A cautionary tale.
You might say that.
Yeah, and it is both set against the later story of Aragorn and the earlier story of Luthien to Nuviel and Beren. And I think
Yeah.
there's even a reference in the story of Turin. There's a reference to Beren, which I thought was interesting. I never caught that before.
Sure,
Um,
that makes sense. I mean, and it really follows right on. It's immediately connected to
yeah,
thematically, like and in its place in the corpus.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I forget which character it is who says it, but he says something like "Thou art not Beren."
Yeah.
And I thought that was really what a dig.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Which is really interesting, just as somewhat of an aside. I still can't get over the implications. Once you read the Silmarillion, you go back and you read the Lord of the Rings, when they say like to Frodo after carrying the ring or whatever, like though these great like Beren and all the great heroes of the past be seated there, you would be among them. You would have your place among them. Like, that's a
yeah,
really, really. It's the opposite of what the one fellow said to Turin. But
yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah, I forget who says it. I probably should see if I can search for it, but it doesn't really matter ultimately, I suppose. But yeah, it's a bit of a dig against him, but um it kind of is in keeping with his whole sad sack story. And I thought maybe it might be good to do a quick synopsis of his sad sack story first, in case anybody has not read the work. And if they haven't read the work and they don't like watching videos like Nerd of the Rings video synopsis, then here maybe a quick synopsis might help, right? So, what is the story of Turin Turambar? Or just Turin, because he calls himself Turambar later on, I think.
Right. So he's Turin. He's the son of Hurin,
Sorry.
and Hurin and Huor are brothers, right?
Mm.
So then we get naturally the name of sons, Turin and Tuor, respectively, meaning son of Hurin and son of Huor. And Hurin and Huor are involved in. No, they're both taken into the. Let me back up a little bit. In the beginning was Iluvatar, right? Maybe a bit too far back.
That's too far
Maybe
back.
quoting
Roll the tape
too far
forward,
back.
brother Maynard.
All right. Let's skip ahead. The Hurin and Huor are human beings, effectively taken into the household of these elvish princes, right? So they are, you could say, equivalent of sort of the stewards of a household or something. They're involved, right? They're not slaves, they're not pets, as perhaps we joked about earlier. But they're really, they form part of the household. They have a significant role, right? They're the great heroes of men of old, as is mentioned in The Hobbit, actually. And bad things happen as they do, and everybody's fighting against Morgoth and his dark evil minions. And focusing on Hurin, it bad things happen to him. Hurin, right? So Hurin has a son named Turin and his wife, and they're back at home because Turin is really, really young. And Hurin is valiantly fights like to the end. Oh, if you could say that, almost. There's like piles of orc bodies around him, right? Until he's finally overpowered. But instead of killing him, Morgoth says, I do that to a lot of people. I'm bored with just killing people. Think of all the fun we could have beforehand. I'll hold on to him. And then I will break him. I will make him watch all the bad things that happen to his son, to his wife, son, daughter. Turns out, spoiler alert, and to his family. What make him watch all the bad things that happen to his family, and then turn him loose, a broken man, to wander around the world, wallowing in his phantom state. Now, mind you, that is
Sadist. Quite,
that is
quite
he's
this.
very sadistic. That is
Yeah.
precisely, by the way, for those who know, that is exactly what the mouthpiece of Sauron is threatening to do with Frodo when he's bluffing about having Frodo. When he meets with
Ah,
Gandalf and Aragorn at the gate, and it says, we're gonna have our boys go to work on him with a pair of pliers and a blowtorch, and and then we might release him to you eventually, so you can witness his broken. Once he's been thoroughly broken, and all of that. They're talking about this sort of thing, right? So that's the implicit reference is back to this. So what happens to Hurin, he's put into the comfy chair, something far worse than the comfy chair, and made to watch through Morgoth's sort of magic looking glass, if you will, all the tragedy that unfolds. So he's tied there being tortured and having to watch his wife and his daughter and his son go from bad to worse. Things, not only things happening to them, but Turin doing bad things in this complete tragedy, right? So that's the
Yeah.
summary of
Yeah.
what
Let me
we've got.
pause you for just a second on that.
Yeah.
Okay. You said it's a comfy chair. It's more like the uncomfy chair from all the paintings that I saw, all the
The
just pictures
uncanny
of,
chair.
yeah, it's like a chair of stone. But it's interesting you bring up that he has him looking through a mirror. It's almost like he's looking into a palantir. And so
Yes.
the later image in The Lord of the Rings of Denethor is really very much a parallel to what Hurin goes through in the original
Yes.
story. And both of them,
Yes.
both of them are a parallel to our current situation of staring into the internet all day in your comfortable rotating, ergonomically designed leather chair and seeing nothing but destruction and terror and awfulness the entire day, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So anyway, going with your
Just to
narrative.
power the Skeksis. And the right, that's it. It's all staring into the dark crystal. And what Hurin sees is the Narnihin Hurin. Right. That's what we have is the tale, the bad tale of the children of Hurin. Right. That's
Mhm.
and so one thing is important to remember the frame is that it works at multiple levels. I think this is what I would deem one of Tolkien's most complex works
Yes, I agree.
because it's very, very much a cautionary tale. And there's, of course, within the text, there's a lot of layers, but it's a cautionary tale, but also needs to be fits within a certain frame that brings into, like, the whole frame is calling into question the veracity of the narrator of the story.
Hmm.
It's sort of anonymous narrative voice, because it's not the story as history factually happens, so much as the tale of what Hurin saw happen. That is
Hmm.
a very selective vision with a very particular spin and lens and filters over the cover to see only certain things and to amplify other things in a certain light. Now, Turin, yeah, he made mistakes. Bad things happened to him. He did bad things and led from one thing to another. But actually, effectively, lead from one thing to his mother. But the we don't know what's true. That's the
So
fundamental
that's an
premise.
interesting point. That's an interesting point. Before we get into the actual story of Turin's wanderings, that's an interesting point because I've thought, how does this fit into the larger Silmarillion thingamy?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's the various stories that Tolkien was working on that are gathered together by his son. So we have to just maybe let it go with that. But if we take the literary conceit that this is an elvish work that is being narrated by an elvish narrator, then the elf narrator or the elvish culture would have gotten the story from somebody who would have seen the whole scope of the story, and it would probably be Hurin. And if that's the case, then Hurin is seeing the world through this jaded eye, the troll splinter, where all he sees is a history of successive failures. And in some ways, it's like if you look at history at all, you can
Mm-hmm.
either look at history as salvific history, that is the workings of God throughout the course of the tragedy of human life. Or you can look at it as just one darn thing after another. It's just constant failure and we're all doomed and everything we do is futile and we're going to get hit by an asteroid anyway. So it's all like, just tragedy. And I think the latter part is what Hurin sees, which he passes on in narrative to the elf, who then puts it into this
Mm-hmm.
work. Does that sound to you
Yeah,
accurate?
essentially in terms of the origin of this text, yeah, the etiology of it, I think it would be something along those lines. Because Hurin is released finally when he's broken, and he and his wife meet at the graveside of their grown and
Yeah,
dead children,
yeah.
right? and they essentially they don't speak, and then they hold hands, and she dies. The wife, they're old, right? They're old at this point. His wife dies as the sun set, and holding Hurin's hand, and she's buried there. And then he kind of wanders. He's just this broken man and wanders. So presumably some elf finds him because he's a person of no small significance,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
And maybe takes him in their last days or something, and then they tell the tale of
Yeah.
the woes of the children of Hurin.
Yeah. Yeah, I've
Such as
often thought, like,
it.
I know that the Lord of the Rings is told with the conceit that it was written down by Bilbo and then Frodo and then Sam Gamgee at the end. And so you
Right,
get their perspective on the events that happened. And
right.
I know that The Hobbit is told with the conceit that it's Bilbo's memoirs. I've often
Yes,
thought, wouldn't it be interesting if you had a work that told, say, the passing of the Helcaraxe, for instance, or the War of Wrath or something, but from the perspective of one of the characters, like Galadriel before she leaves, giving her story to Sam to pass on, that kind of thing.
right.
What would the perspective be like? Because it does seem to infiltrate into, or no, it seems to filter, not infiltrate. It filters the story from what we hear and what we don't hear.
Well, absolutely. I mean, they absolutely would. I mean, this is why people joke about, for example, the Silmarillion. The whole Silmarillion corpus is, a rich bit of elvish propaganda, right?
Yeah.
It's because it's elf literature. What do the human beings have to say about that, or something, right? Now, obviously, some people take this. I think that's within the realms of legitimate speculation. Some people go far to say, well, the poor little orc babies and their families and all this, in the making of some of these abomination adaptations to television. Let's call a spade a spade.
That's right.
The, is that they miss the point that orcs are essentially non-characters. They're not the role that orcs have is not another race of sentient beings as such in the way that we would mean the humanoid type thing.
Right.
They're the villain placeholders, which is why they're such varied shapes and forms and all of that. Is they're ghouls and goblins,
Right. Yeah.
quite literally goblins. I mean,
Well, yeah.
they're
And
not like
s-
a trodden
yeah.
down race or something. There's no racialism in Tolkien, as we beat to death
Yeah.
before.
And I think it would be similar to that work that was done that told the Beowulf story from the perspective of Grendel. It might be interesting as an exercise, but really, I mean, who cares in a way?
Yeah,
It because
it's
we are
just a
not
different
rocks.
right. It's a different book. That's not within the legitimate realms of a reshaping in the
Yep.
Anglo-Saxon tradition.
Yep.
But if you could write a work that purports to be the memoirs of Celeborn or something, and it's finally just come to light. Turns out it was hidden. It was found in the Bodleian Library back in the whatever shelf. And, it turns out it was originally part of the collection, which the Red Book came out of, which we know is actually not only finally written down by Sam, but then redacted by Meriadoc.
Right.
Kind of compiling things together. But it was actually there. Turns out there was another work there that Sam had received from Galadriel and Celeborn before they all got on the boat, right? Something like that. Actually, Celeborn doesn't, but we'll get into that some other time. But somehow he has this accounting, and that would be a legitimate thing, and that would be very in keeping historically.
Yeah.
There are a lot of precedents for this, right? That in the Middle Ages were just overflowing with these kinds of literature, right? I should say
Right.
actually from the late ancient, so classical period into at least the 14th, 15th century, there were these different tales and accounts from the perspective of this or that person from 1,000 years ago
Yep.
or more. That's these sort of speculative narrative meditations on something.
Yeah.
And I think that would be
And
very legitimate. I think very, very interesting as a project to do, particularly if you originally wrote it in Quenya or Sindarin and then
yeah, it'd
translated it to the
be
common tongue.
quite the work. Yeah,
Yeah,
and so there's a question which I want to suspend until after we get the narrative of Turin down.
right.
But I've wondered, is there a way to look at this story at all with a salvation eye?
I think
Is there,
absolutely.
is there
I
something in there that you can see a salvific?
I would go further and say the way that Tolkien writes it into this particular frame isn't doesn't set us up to read it in a salvific way. One can do that, I think, to a limited extent, so much as it necessarily implicates us into it implicates us, we are forced into an introspection of the fallibility and the frailty of our own credulity.
Right.
Do
Right.
we
Right.
believe, to what extent, you have to be aware in reading this, if we understand the frame and we respect that frame, then we have to call into question our own ability to discern the truth.
Mm.
That means essentially one could say, not only is Turin a cautionary tale, it in some ways is a mirror that we're looking at and participating in, saying, I don't know how much of this is true, but I might kind of recognize some things about Turin in me, but I'm not sure if those are even real in the story, let alone real in me. And so there's no, I mean, in fact, in some ways, you're left with a solution of either nihilism or Dostoevsky style
Yeah.
repentance, go
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
answer,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think he sets it up like that.
Yes, I
In
think
my
you're right on
opinion.
that score. There are a lot of things that happen to this guy, and maybe in narrating his story, we can gloss over a few of them. But I remember there's an ancient maxim that character is fate. Character is fate. I think certainly in an unredeemed world, that's absolutely true. Probably is to some degree in a redeemed world as well, but in an unredeemed world, it's absolutely true. Character is fate. And so when we finish talking about the narrative, another question to ask is how does Turin's character create his own tragic end, his own tragic events that occurred during his life? But let's skip to the actual things that happened to Turin part here in brief. You want to take that?
Uh,
Can we be
um,
brief?
yeah, I don't know. First, put the kids out of the room. It's not clean, right?
Mm, hmm.
Um,
Certainly, we know that he was raised by elves, and we know that he's exiled, and he comes back, and he's with bandits for a while, and he
right.
ends up. My understanding is that he ends up actually in the court of one of the elf kings, and counsels him. He counsels him to actually ride out against the forces of Morgoth, and
Right.
it's not a good idea. And he also counsels him to build this huge bridge that traverses the chasm that creates this fortress, and that's not a good idea.
It comes
And I
into
think
play later.
isn't he even warned by one of the gods to not build that bridge or to tear it down or something like that, right?
Yeah. Some and so there's one setup that becomes very plot important is that he's raised in Doriath by the elves, right?
Right.
Away from his mother, not because it's bad or anything, just he is, right? Because that's how fosterhood works.
Yeah.
Um, and that means he's not aware. Mind you, you may recognize this plot setup. He's raised by somebody far away from his home and his parents, and he's not aware he has a sister.
Mm. Hmm.
And so he's growing up with Uncle Owen, and in
That's an odd parallel,
a
isn't
much
it?
nicer place than some
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
bubble in the
Exactly.
desert. Uh, um,
Uncle
but
Owen.
through the Force or the revelation of the Valar, he comes to learn of his younger sister Nienor. Now it's not a twin, but although he's never seen her, there's some messages that he gets. Incidentally, they invite his mother to come and stay. She says no. He's just, he's sad about that. Who wouldn't be? He's 9, 10 years old. Later, he learns he has a younger sister, but he doesn't know who she is and he's never seen her before. And like another epic that people may be more familiar with, at some point, they become, at least momentarily, romantically involved, although I will say rather longer of a moment than Leia and Skywalker.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
where
yeah,
they share a brief kiss,
yeah,
this is going all the way in an
yeah.
Oedipus Rex sort of arrangement.
Mm, hmm. Children, the whole
And
catastrophe.
exactly the whole catastrophe all the way through. And it's not until later that he is shown, it's revealed to him that in fact, dude, that's your sister. Which is of course
Ouch.
a big taboo, big no-no.
Yeah.
and complicated, not like you said, children the whole 9 yards. It's not like, oh, we'll just stop doing that and whatever. There are irreparable consequences, right, of those tragic choices.
Yeah. Yeah. So he is here we have Anfauglith, which is this is the realm of the north, which is where Morgoth is, right?
Mhm.
And if I remember right, early in the story, there's an infection or a plague that actually kills his little sister, kills Laughter is her name. And he, Turin, is sent by his what, mother, maybe, or father to go live with the elves.
Yes.
And she stays there they're in this area, I think, with Dorloman, somewhere around here.
Yep. Dorlomin sounds right.
Yeah, okay. And Hurin has already been captured and held prisoner, and she sends Turin off to be with the court of the elves. And meanwhile, she what has a child that is the younger sister in Enial, and then he gets exiled. But does she travel down to the same court of the elves in Doriath with the young girl? Is that what happens?
Not while he's there anyway. I don't
Not while he's
remember if
there. Yeah, because
they.
he never
I
meets her.
want
He
to.
never meets his
They
sister.
never meet until they meet as strangers
Yeah.
and become involved with each other.
Right. Okay.
So like the setup too is of course, so Hurin is captured, the big battle, the bad things happening, is the Nirnaeth Arnuidiad, the battle of
Yeah.
unnumbered tears. So
And
that
that's
should
up
set
here.
the tone for Turin's life,
Ah.
right? That should set the tone for Turin's life. So he's sent away. That's right. He has a second sister. His other younger, so he had two sisters. The one who died because of the Black Breath.
That's what it
Um,
was called.
and then his second sister is born after he's in exile, so he doesn't know. So they've never been in the same place, right? So
Okay.
it's not like he had a younger sister, he doesn't recognize her now grown up. It's she was born after he was sent away,
Okay.
right? So he's growing up there, and it's his troubles really start aside from just like family relationship heartbreak. Okay, your dad was captured, presumably killed. Nobody knows anything about him. Your sister died of the plague of this, like say, this demonic plague that came through, and you were sent away from your mother, and then your mother's invited, and she says no. She has very good reasons for doing so, but you don't know that. You just think mom doesn't love you, and so there he is, prepubescent boy growing up away from
Yeah.
home. He tries to travel against somebody's advice, where he wants to go fight the Dark Lord, as you mentioned. And I'm just I'm glossing through the Tolkien Gateway summary here of this because I think
Right.
that'll help anchor us as we go. He asked the king's permission to go join a certain group fighting the orcs of Morgoth. He wears the dragon helm of Dorlomin, which is, as we saw the artistic adaptation, probably inspired by Sutton. Yeah, clearly, the Sutton helmet is a dragon helmet. Upon returning, so he goes and they fight. And the orcs begin to fear him more than any other. So he's got this hero aura, whilst also being under this deep curse. So we know there's a deep curse on him, but he's got that sort of Greek hero aura. He's somehow anointed by the gods in some way, and yet also fatally cursed, which puts him in the place of Adam, right, the fallen man, in a late antiquity, early Middle Ages sort of frame up, right? Adam lay abandoned. So he returns
And this, by the way,
accidentally.
this is
Yes.
Nargothrond. Is that the stronghold? Because it's not Gondolin. Gondolin's the hidden city up here,
No,
I think.
north of that is, yep, Nargothrond, above the Fen of Serek.
So here's
Oh,
Nargothrond down
oh,
here.
that's down there. I don't, the realm of Nargothrond. Sorry, whose stronghold? Not Morgoth's.
The elvish stronghold of
Elvis
Gondolin
stronghold. There
here.
is a stronghold down in Nargothrond. Otherwise, Doriath is, I think, on the map there, more to
Okay,
the
yeah.
to that east there.
All right. And that's where he is.
This is where he's hanging
What?
out. This is where he's being
That's where he's
raised.
hanging out. Okay.
Yep. So he comes back from the wars, these battles, and accidentally causes the death of one of Thingol's counselors. accidentally. Well,
Is that where he
you
throws the
know,
cup? Or
they got into a side quest. So Saros is the counselor, right? They get into a quarrel. There's a cup involved, right? Um, Turin approaches manhood, so he's a teenager. Saros he's got a sharp tongue. Enters the dining hall late, finds his accustomed seat among the elders occupied by Turin. Turin is an unkempt teenage mortal human being. Seros, angered by this, assuming that Turin pridefully has done this in an attempt to affront him, so lesson in jumping to conclusions, right? His anger was all the more to find that Turin was welcomed rather than rebuked by the elders. So Seros feels, therefore, rejected, not only slighted by this punk teenager who looks like a dirty hippie,
right.
but they're
Yeah.
preferring him over me, and I'm
Yeah.
one of the king's counselors. So all of the wrath of the tenured professor flies up in him. And he plies Turin with questions about news from the birds. Oh, this, that. What about this? And the mockery in his voice was clear. Turin gets tired of this, lost in his thoughts. He frowns. He doesn't. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Oh, what did you do at school today, kid? Nothing. And gets that. And then he says the fatal words. He asks loudly for all to hear it that if the men of Hithlum were so wild, that is to say, like savage, animal-looking bestial, what must the women be like? Do they run like deer, clad only in their own hair? Do they run naked in the
Right.
wilderness? Now you're saying this to a really angsty teenager whose mom is potentially being ravished by the orcs as we speak, and whose sister died of the Black Death. He
Yes.
feels a certain chip on his shoulder. He snaps. He
This is
throws
sort
his
of
heavy drinking vessel into Seros's
yes.
face, and then proceeds to strip him naked and make him run. Say, oh, hey, can you run like a deer? Can you run like a deer? Exactly. Basically, dance monkey, and pulls out
That's
the
right.
pistols. And the guy runs off and then dies.
Yeah. Runs off a
Right.
cliff and hits his head. So that's sort of like it's like, can you tell me in 100 words or less of what comes to mind when I ask you about your mother? You want to hear about my mother? I'll
Yeah.
tell you about my mother. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So he is exiled, I think, from that.
Yeah.
And then come the bandits.
And then come the bandits. And then the
Okay.
bandits come. So he's exiled because, it's like, well, we could execute you, or what do we do? Exile him.
Yeah.
So he goes and he finds some outlaws, hangs out with the outlaws, becomes a bandit pretty quick. He's adopted as their leader because he's
Yeah.
just that charismatic.
It's like Robin Hood.
And yeah, he's got this great brotherhood of these band of brothers out in the camp. It's not bad. Now, mind you, what do we call it? Outlaws, bandits, briganti,
Yes.
brigands.
Yes.
They're very common in borderlands, right? Whether that's between various states in medieval Italy or between Scotland and Northumbria, England in most of history. Right, you've got these borderlands where rule of law is really fuzzy. So it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody who's an outlaw is bad, necessarily. But all of them are, well, none of them are innocent, even if they're not necessarily guilty, if we say it that way, right? Not guilty as charged, but they don't have a clean record. And so they have to live by their own wits, rough lot, right? So they live that way. They come across a petty dwarf, the pettiest of dwarves. He's such a prick. And they get this petty dwarf. This is this strange race. There's this other race of creature, which we're not clear whether it's actually related to the dwarves that we know and love, otherwise Gimli and company, or whether it's something totally different. But it's literally petty, like smaller. It's a much smaller,
it's like a gnome.
gnomish kind of dwarf.
Yeah.
He's got small guy issues. He's got short guy problems. Very, very much. It's a Joe Pesci kind of attitude.
Yeah, right.
with a dagger. And so they overcome him, though they overpower him through some deal that they make, and he's forced to share his halls with them. And he, of course, betrays them. And well, there's at least that.
Yeah.
He's captured, and his men are slain. They don't treat him very well. So it's the problem. So you've got in each of the, in so far in each of these incidences, Turin, and this is the pattern that, of course, follows throughout. Turin does something rash, brash, rude, or murderous.
Yes.
But in each case, he's not a sole unprovoked actor. There's some other jerk who's doing some sort of thing
Right. And he's responding.
provokes him into it.
And he ends up responding to the jerk with equally violent and powerful jerkiness, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
The
so,
and I'm seeing a parallel here in the description of these brigands. I'm seeing a parallel to Faramir and the foresters later on.
bingo. Thank
But
you.
I'm also seeing a parallel in the story of the petty dwarf to that story of Snow White and Rose Red, which is an old fairy
Yes.
tale. You know.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah,
And
he's
that
very
is a
much
petty
like
dwarf.
that. Yeah.
That one
Yeah.
right there. That's not a half-sized dwarf. That's a petty dwarf with his
Yep.
beard stuck in the thing or whatever.
And he's not very nice.
No, he's not very nice. And that's why they treat him like trash,
Yeah.
because he's just kind of a prick.
So
And so
they return evil for evil.
right. And then
Okay.
he goes around, then he goes and basically he tells the orcs where they are, and they get slain, and Turin is captured. His men are killed. So
Yeah, and so far in the story, and this is a theme which I was thinking about when I was reading it. This whole story of Turin is sort of a reflection on what does the world of power, the default thing for humanity, what does it look like? You know, when you're trying constantly to play the game and to beat the world with its own tools and to become numero uno, what does that look like? I think this is a very good reflection on exactly what that looks like. It's like The Sopranos, you know, it's like Breaking Bad. It's this story of Turin where he
yeah.
responds. He never responds by saying, "Oh, you're right, I was wrong." He never responds with, "I know you're showing violence against me, but I'm not going to return violence." He never takes the high road, ever. So
Yeah, no. He responds insult for insult, and is implicated in all of these things. And it's and one of his names, the names that he chooses for himself
Oh yeah.
and are given, but he names himself these. So what you said, nomen omen, right? The name is the fate. He chooses certain names. He's just called Turin, as after his father, which, by the way, is evocative to the modern, should be to the modern educated reader, modern in Tolkien's day anyway, educated reader. You would know that it feels like it has to do with a bull, maybe a little bull, right? Some diminutive of bull. So it says something about his personality, which just comes through. You see that. Whether Tolkien consciously intended that or not, that comes through very clearly. He does this from time to time. But Seiros calls him a woodwose, right? A wildman of the woods. We see actual race of woses, wild men, later on with Aragorn. And they're very honorable, actually. But he's insulted by this, right? Later on, people ask him, and he's, who are you? He just names himself Wildman, Woodwose. Later on, when he joins the Outlaws, he takes himself the name Nathan, which is not like our modern Nathan, but sounds the same. Nathan, which means the wronged one, right?
Wronged one, yeah.
What's your name?
They done me wrong.
Done me wrong.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
This is the leader of our clan. They done me wrong. Right. So he's this hard-bitten character. Later on, he claims lordship over something. He gives himself the name Dreadhelm. Right. He's the badass now. And you see him moving in a certain way. By the way, again, another thing, we should understand something of his character, again, to make it familiar. If you look at the Godfather, Michael comes back.
Yes.
He's in his case, it's not all the tragic things, but the whole story of the Godfather is the war hero comes back He gets tied into the wrong situations. He tries to avenge his father, and he ends up with the final scene with the baptism, the absolute hypocrisy of the baptismal scene. Right, I reject Satan and all his pomps and all his works and deceits, and
Love it.
having all these guys assassinated,
Yep.
right, including
I
his
love it.
own, including his own brother. So yeah, that shift of character and personality, except in this case, actually much more tragic and less simply making bad choices.
Yeah,
He later takes on the name Bloodstained.
that's
When
good.
he tries to hide his identity, he calls himself Bloodstained. And then he's given the name by the elves of Nargothrond. That's Nargothrond you're mentioning. He ends up down there, and they call him Adan Edel. Adan meaning man, of course, like Dunadan, man of the West. Adan Edel, elf man.
Elf
He's
man.
so it's like elf friend, but like bringing you onto the level of same race as us, right? So recognizing his nobility. Then interestingly, he's given a name later by Finduilas when he calls himself Bloodstained. She calls him instead Thurin, which comes very close to the mark of his real name, Turin, but Thurin in Sindarin means the secret.
Hmm.
Right? So there's some implication that she might know and she's just slightly covering that up, or whether she just means it this way. And he's later called the Black Sword and Turambar, which he gives to himself, living among these men in Brethel. He gives to himself the name Turambar, the master of his own doom.
Master of his own doom, master of his own fate.
That's where it goes real bad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's where it goes real bad. And the elves
Well,
in their documentary of him, at the end of it all, they call him Neiramarth, the evil fated.
you faded. But it's interesting that Turambar, it just occurred to me when I was reading this. Turambar, the master of his own fate, is really, I have come this far, and now I have decided that I will not destroy this thing. The ring is mine. It's the same
Bingo.
thing, right? I am the
Bingo.
master. I am the Lord of the Rings. I am the master of my own fate. So it's
Right.
again, Tolkien does this frequently, and I love it. It's like a paralleling of what Turin Turambar was trying to do way back when.
Mm-hmm.
And in that story, of course, Frodo is saved by, the eucatastrophe that the Gollum character comes and rips his finger off or bites his finger off.
Right.
But that was really cool to think about that. I'm master of my own fate. Well, good luck with that, buddy.
Which is of course, I mean, that's the quintessence of the Faustian spirit, right? That
Mm-hmm.
characterizes the modern West.
Yep.
Is that I'm going to become the master of my own fate. And
Master of
don't
the
you know,
universe.
like Mr. Faust, Dr. Faust himself, one bad thing leads to another.
Yes.
Except this is just writ large, and a
Yes.
massive, cosmic implications of it.
Yeah. So what's
Um,
the next bad thing
the
that
next
happens
bad
to him?
thing, the next bad thing is he's rescued. So he's captured, right? He's betrayed by Mim, the petty dwarf. He's captured, and all of his men are slain. Then he's captured, and while he's being dragged off to Morgoth, right? He's rescued. He's rescued by Beleg. Beleg comes and rescues his sons, and in
And Be
return,
and Beleg is his buddy from Doriath, who has been his companion, trainer,
his deep
Batman
friend.
and Robin sort of thing.
Yep. And so he rescues him with the help of Gwindor, another escaped slave, and in a fit of the fog of war.
Yeah.
It was raining. There were things in my eye. He slays him. He slays Beleg with Beleg's own sword, his deep friend and his rescuer. And he feels pretty bad about that.
Yeah, I would
That
guess.
was should have thought before I shot, right?
So, oops. Yeah.
Yeah. Now he composes and sings the lament for Beleg,
Mm.
and he falls into a deep, restless slumber where he dreamt of searching for Beleg and asking where his body was buried. And the voice of Beleg, vague and distant, called out to him, letting him know that his life had winged to the long waiting in the halls of the moon or the hills of the sea.
Mm.
In other words, the halls of Mandos,
Mm-hmm.
and for courage to be his comfort. when Turin awoke, he was healed of this. He went into this sort of psychic coma, shall we say, and he comes out of that. Not without drinking from a particularly enchanted pool, which is evocative, of course, of the river Lethe, right, of forgetting.
Right.
Right. Well, anyway, if you know, you know, and if you don't, you'll discover it in
Maybe you knew,
context.
but you forgot.
Right. Maybe you knew, but you forgot.
So is that how
Um,
he ends up down here in
that's how he gets to
Nargothrond?
Nargothrond. The Gwyndor leads him off to Nargothrond, where he's ashamed to let his identity be known.
Um,
This is where he calls himself Agarwain, son of Umarth, the blood-stained one, the son of ill fate, evil fate. So he had the sword. This is again, as we're looking at Aragorn, we'll look at Aragorn alongside this. The sword, Beleg's sword, Anglakel, with which he had slain Beleg. You just killed your friend with this. This thing is not you. It's not good. You can't use it again, right? That's that sort of thing.
but he does.
Yeah. Well, he has it reforged in this
Mm,
place and named Gurthong. So it becomes a new sword. It becomes a new
hmm.
sword. And names it Gurthang, Iron of Death. Death Iron would be more like it's Death Iron. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, Finduilas, the daughter of Orodreth, falls in love with him, but he avoids her because she had previously been the beloved of his friend Gwyndor. So Turin is not a bad guy. He's an ill-fated guy. He's still trying to make good choices, right? And he says, "No, I can't go with you. You're the object of the love of my best friend." This enter scene, from stage left or something. You walk into a Shakespeare play here.
Hmm.
And Turin declines to tell her his real name, and so she calls him Thorin the Secret. And he's called Elfman. So he's starting to regain. People are treating him decently here. There's a beautiful woman in love with him. Now she happens to be his, best friend. And we don't step into an episode of Two Gentlemen from Verona,
Yeah.
but
She's
he's
Jesse's girl.
yeah, he's trying to do the right thing. His identity doesn't remain hidden for long, however, because Gwyndor knows who he is. So Gwyndor tells Finduilas, "Hey, you can't love him. He's Turin. I love you. You're supposed to." He's Turin. Umarth is his famous father Hurin. So Umarth, the ill-fated, is not wrong. That's the other thing. The name that he takes for himself, that he gives himself here, that he goes under, bloodstained son of ill fate. He's not. He's being perfectly truthful. He is stained with blood. He slayed his friend. And he's also responsible for the death of that other elf, right? The king's counselor
Right.
who he chased off a cliff. That naked, because why not? You can't just kill a guy. You got to shame him first.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and ill fate, yeah, that went bad for him. That's true of his father, right? That's things are not going well for him.
Yeah.
Now,
And Gwyndor
yes,
Gwyndor actually tells Finduilas about this, I think, partly because he doesn't like the fact that she loves Turin, but also because I think he's worried about the fact that Turin, wherever he goes, people die.
exactly. If you go with him, things are going to happen to you
Yeah, don't
because
go with that
everybody knows
boy.
there's this curse on him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the
And
guy who's going to drive his car really fast along the ravine, Don't go with
yeah.
him.
Yeah. And the interesting part is that he's aware of this curse and obviously still acts the way that he does, which is, it's also the whole thing is a meditation in the nature of, or perhaps even the illusion of free will, right? And responsibility and fate.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the reasons he goes under all these pseudonyms is he thinks that revealing his true identity is going to bring home Morgoth's curse to wherever he is, right? To the people around him.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing.
So
Yeah.
if you believe your identity is a curse, you go under false identities.
Hmm.
But think about
Hmm.
what just what does that elaborate into?
Hmm. But it also brings up a larger theme, I think, that is in this story, which is we've met the enemy and the enemy is us. It's almost
Yeah.
like Turin thinks that the enemy is out there, that the enemy is Morgoth. And indeed, in this case, it's Morgoth and Glaurung and these others. But the enemy for him is also kind of Turin. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like he tries to get away from the curse that Morgoth threatens, and he runs right into the curse that he himself makes for himself over and over again.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay,
I
so
think that's it. Like that's the heart of it.
yeah, yeah.
So he's
Which
welcomed into, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
it just raises that question, which I want to address when we get to the finality here. It raises the question of whether or not there is such a thing as fate, or whether there is only, or whether there's providence, or whether there's only us. That's I think a question that's being raised in the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think very much. And I would say, like, understanding that this is written by a guy who was in the trenches in World War One,
Huh.
and you didn't just suffer war, you did war, right?
Yeah.
And all that comes from, because often we look at, I think we look at people historically and say, well, they were in this war, wow, they could be traumatized. Yeah, but it's not a lot of trauma is not primarily what you suffered, but the awareness of what you did,
Yes.
right?
Right. Right.
That's a different kind of thing.
Right. Because
And so,
we never hear about Mr. Tolkien having to bludgeon someone to death or shoot somebody or bayonet them. We don't hear about
right,
that.
exactly. And whether he had to explicitly do one or the other, whatever, you're throwing grenades over, firing mortars, and you're listening to people scream bloody murder all night long, hoping somebody will just finally pick him off. Even if you're not pulling the trigger, you know that you're morally complicit in this very complicated situation.
Yeah.
And so I can see where this is, in many ways, not the only, but a big working out of these kinds of problems in a way, into a level of sophistication that I think has yet to be matched by any any other modern, therapy,
Well,
writings,
yeah, I
or
mean,
sort.
I think there is a strong tendency among all of us to have at least an element of fatalism. And I think that fatalism is made worse when either we don't have a vision of how to get out of it, or we are in a situation which is quite dire, poverty or gang or crime or drugs or a sexual situation. As long as we're in that, the sense of fatalism becomes worse and worse and worse in some ways.
Mhm.
And I think that Tolkien certainly embodies this sense that he might have had, certainly, that, yeah, nothing I do is going to be good. It's all going to be fate and death and blood and incest and all that. But
And
we're getting I'm getting ahead of myself because the incest is on
but
the horizon. Sorry.
that's true. But what you just said is exactly what Aragorn cusses under his breath when Frodo disappears because Boromir tried to take the ring, and the two other hobbits run off, and everything's falling apart. Everybody's going different directions.
Hmm.
Aragorn says, "Every plan I've made today, every decision has gone wrong. Everything
Yeah.
has gone ill."
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's
He
yeah.
has that moment of the curse of Turin coming home to him. Right?
Right.
There
Yeah.
goes the ring off, and the orcs are coming in. And it just all goes, everything. You can just imagine his absolute blackness and despair in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we experience that just trying to get people out of the door in the morning to get to school.
Yeah. Right.
you know, this
One
is
more shoe.
much deeper.
The black breath
Uh,
is upon me. Yes. Right.
so this is also a cautionary tale in thinking you have any idea what is good and right and just in any situation. This is a condemnation of any and all consultants. Turin becomes the chief counselor of King Orodreth
Mm.
of Nargothrond. Now, remember, Nargothrond, for those of you who aren't the nerds of the rings, the Lord of the Nerds, the Nargothrond elves have gone full enclosure away from the world. It's just not worth messing in. We just stay private. We stay quiet. We hide. Similar to Gondolin, right? Similar to Gondolin, a little less magnificent, a little more secretive.
So gated community.
Gated community. We don't want to mess with it. We can't face Morgoth. We just have to wait until, perhaps Gondolin thinks they can outlast it.
Mm.
The Nargothrond elves go more underground behind a waterfall. Behind a waterfall, again, sound like somebody we know later on
Yes.
in Gondor.
Yes.
And they're more not hoping to wait it out and they'll just kind of outlast it. Is they're actively hiding because they're in the bunkers, right? In the bunkers, we're no idea of this. Now they end up with a weak king, Orodreth. And Turin becomes his chief counselor, highly honored. This guy's charisma just follows him everywhere like a curse. He's highly influential in Nargothrond. What he says, people start to do. He encourages the elves of Nargothrond to abandon their practice of secrecy. We need to come out into the world, open the gates wide, join with the other elves. We could overpower whatever it is, right? You guys, this doesn't make sense. You can't just hide out here in the ghetto all the time. Open the gates, build a big bridge before the gates. Open up commerce.
So I got to pause on that for just I got to pause on that.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting little point, especially in our day and age, because there's so much movement, especially in Catholic communities, to create these happy little establishments that are self-sufficient and they're all Catholic, we're all just living together. And I'm not saying I'm against that, but it is interesting that that's kind of what Nargothrond is. And Nargothrond is counseled even by the gods, right, to maintain that, to not march out and face Glaurung. So there is an element that's what we should be doing, but at the same time, Glaurung's headed this way. It's like your little gated community is secret, yes. But what about all the other people in Middle Earth? And what about the fact that you're right in the path of Glaurung and Morgoth's forces? What do you do with that? It's a really interesting paradox that Tolkien is raising here about how to respond to the encroaching evil, I would say, of the modern world, but the encroaching evil that threatens you. I just find that really interesting.
I think that is, and because especially when we look at the two models that are provided, Gondolin and Nargothrond. Gondolin, they're trying to hide and they think they can outlast it. They're not really engaged in fighting. They just I would say they're more the Gondolin is more the paradigm of their happy little gated community. We just keep going as though, pick your bad point in history where it all went to pot. That and after never happened, right? You just live in your little golden age. That's what Gondolin's trying to be, right? Exactly. Shakers, certain groups I can think of today in their own little places, even within the Catholic Church, for example, that you mentioned, and others, and sort of not naivete, but play pretend naivety, right? It's all going to be fine. We just say secret there. The Nargothrond elves are waging guerrilla war. They live essentially in an underground palace, hidden in a realm, hidden behind this waterfall, and they go and they wage guerrilla war against these orcs and spies and so on, right? Against the forces of Morgoth. Just like the Dunedain of Ithilien.
Right.
Just like the Dunedain of the North, minus the waterfall bit. But essentially, it's the Dunedain tactic in Lord of the Rings. That's their basic MO.
Yep.
So I think that's okay, well, we see that later and how that works out. And like you said, the gods are counseling them to maintain this way. Because what happens, of course, when Turin says, he comes in as the representative of, Bain and McKinsey or something. And so we open up the gates, build the bridge. And I know some of you out there who lean a particular way will say, it's like John the 23rd or whatever, right? Open the gates of the church or something. That's what screwed it all up. I'm not making an explicit reference to that. I'm making an implicit reference to that. But I don't really mean that about that. It's just a helpful metaphor. There are two sides to each sword. And so he encourages to abandon secrecy, build a big bridge. They say, okay, sounds good. We'll do it. Maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should. There's debate, but, they go with it. And he's got his prowess. He's a great hero after all, and he has iron blood, blood
Yeah.
iron sword. He could fight off the bad things. He becomes
Yeah.
Black Sword. He's going to be the great hero. And then the dragon came,
Yep. Glaurung.
right? Glaurung came, and um, he looks. He's got a gaze,
Mm,
the
mm.
dragon gaze, which is a trope completely underestimated. And I have yet to see addressed thoroughly in critical theory literature. They've got the male gaze, they've got the whatever gaze. They don't have the dragon gaze yet, and I think that needs to be written.
Those,
Dissertations, ideas, the
yes,
dragon
exactly.
gaze.
Now, this character Glaurung, I didn't know this until I was doing the research for this get together. He's the first dragon. We wondered, where do the orcs come from? Well, the orcs are the mutated elves, the tortured elves. Where does Glaurung come from? We don't know. He's a creation of Morgoth. He's the
Yeah,
first of all the dragons. He's flightless, he's this gigantic worm.
that
Um,
crawly worm. He doesn't breathe
yeah,
fire.
yeah, it's just like a
He
Frank
just
Herbert almost.
He's
So
Frank Herbert. Got
so
it.
anyway, here is Glaurung, and you're right. He's not just fire and muscle and armor. There's also something about him that is, you could say, magical, which is the way he speaks and his gaze. And they are terrifying. That's the thing that almost terrifies the armies more than his fire and his armor, because when he has a longer history, which we don't need to go into all of it, but in an earlier battle, he's actually
Mhm.
fought by the dwarves, who I think pierce him, and he crawls back to Morgoth, but he doesn't use the words and the gaze at that time. So that's a developed technique after his first impetuous appearance, when
Mhm.
Morgoth says, "Don't go out there," and he goes out there anyway. After his first
Oh,
impetuous appearance, when he gets defeated by the dwarves, who are wearing
yes.
these masks that prevent them from being affected by his fire, and he I think a lot guys going to Chernobyl, right? The dwarves
Yeah.
going to face Glaurung. Um, it's almost like he develops the gaze and the speech during that time, and then he uses them
Yes.
to effect here against not just Turin, but the whole of these armies that are facing him too.
Exactly. Which puts him that he's not just a dragon, but he's effectively a dragon who's become a sorcerer, right?
Yeah,
And he's
yeah,
got a magic power.
yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe it's like Saruman's power, right? Except in the body of a dragon,
Oh
which
yeah,
is a
no,
lot
absolutely.
bigger and meaner looking, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Because I mean, Saruman, right? Saruman.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
And he comes across the gate, and Turin's gonna fight him. And he just looks Turin right in the eyes, and Turin is frozen, like as though he were a basilisk,
Yep.
right? He's completely immobilized, sword in the air. And meanwhile, Glowring keeps his gaze on him, tells the rest of the crew to go in there and pilfer their filthy black guts out.
Yep.
And
Which they
Turin
do.
is stuck watching all of his people, and he's standing there by the gate, making effectively it look like he betrayed them, right? And he's watching them being hauled out,
Mm-hmm.
including
Mm-hmm.
this gal he started to kind of have a thing for, who just certainly has a
Yeah.
thing for him, Finduilas. And she's calling out to him, "Save us, help me, Obi-Wan. You're my only hope," kind of stuff. And he can't do a damn thing. He's completely
Yeah.
immobile. And those cries will echo in his perfect ears.
Yeah. There's some really good art on that too. There it
What
is.
you find that the end of this particular episode then is Finduilas is dragged away as a captive from Morgoth. Glaurung then has a little chit chat. "Well, I've got you here," he says. "I'm going to tell you a few things about what's going on with your mom and your sister, your younger sister
Mm.
that you just found out about. They're suffering in Dorlomin, and you can save one of the two, Finduilas or your mom and your sister, but you
Yeah.
can't save both.
Yeah.
What are you going
Let's
to
see
do?"
here. Yeah. So he gives him this paradoxical choice, right?
Exactly. He sets up a trolley scenario.
Yeah.
And
If
so
you choose
naturally
this, people die, and if you choose that, people die.
yes.
It's weird.
So he abandons Finduilas to seek out his mother and sister, who, of course, were not under any threat. It was completely bullshit. It was a complete lie.
Yeah.
Because, dragon, they don't turn
Right. Dragons speak with forked tongue.
yeah,
Yeah.
surprise.
This is the
Um,
picture. This picture's awesome. I love this picture, but I can't get a
that
big one of it. So
is a good picture.
um, see if I can get a bigger version of it.
So he goes, his mom and his sister are okay. They're not actually in threat. He goes to Dorlom and finds his old house empty and finds some people he used to know there. And he learns that Morwen had left. In his rage, where are we here? Right. Morwen and Nienor are fine. So Morwen, his mother, had left. And where is it here? And in a rage at being so then he realizes he's been screwed over, right? He was misled and made the wrong choice, leaving Finduilas presumably to her terrible, terrible death. And so in a rage, he just slashes out and kills Broda, a certain lord who's there, sealing Erin's fate, blah, blah, blah. Unintended consequences of his problematic heroism. Erin immolates herself alive in the halls, and the remainder of the House of Hador were persecuted by the Easterlings even more cruelly than before. So there's these other tribes of people that, because of Turin's sort of impetuous situation here and his actions, he brings even greater evil, animosity between these other tribes and his ancestral house.
Yeah. And that was Broda, I think, was Easterling, wasn't
Yes,
he?
Broda
And
is the Easterling lord.
yeah, yeah. Which explains a lot later on, because don't the Easterlings engage in the War of the Ring? The Southrons do, and the Easterlings do, I think. But
Easterlings join
yeah,
Sauron. I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
saying that that's because of Turin, but it's because of Turin and other things. But it's
Yeah,
way back. We remember our ancestors were wronged by,
exactly. Yeah.
you did a
I like this
thing.
one too.
Yeah, that's good.
It's a good picture.
So he tries to then go back. Oops, this was a wrong turn. Go back and find Finduilas. But by the time he picks up the orc's trail, it's too late. The woodsmen of Brethil inform him she's been killed as they had tried to rescue the prisoners of Nargothrond. So they tried to rescue the prisoners and she got killed. Turin collapses on the mound she was buried in and was brought into Brethil. And this is where he takes on the name Master of Fate or Master of his own doom.
Turambar.
Yeah, I'm the Doom Master,
Mm,
Turambar.
mm, mm.
And he decided, being the Master of Fate, he's not going to let fate master him because he's done being fatalistic. So far,
Yeah.
that hasn't worked for him. He says, nuts to fate. I call my own, I'm defying gravity and all that, whatever. Shit. And I am master of my own, I'm lord of my own destiny. And part of his destiny, then, he finds a naked young woman, names her Niniel, and takes her as his wife. Turns out, as we find out later, that's his sister.
Yep. Which is remarkable because it's a remarkable bit here because that's almost exactly what Oedipus does in the way back in the Greek literature. Oedipus's story is that there's this prophecy that he's going to kill his dad and marry his mom. And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm running away from them. So he runs away from his mom and dad, who are not his mom and dad. They're actually adopted parents that he was sent to because his parents got the same message and sent him to these other folks. And so he, on the road, to Thebes, I think, kills this old man who turns out to be his dad. And then he goes to Thebes and he solves the riddle of the Sphinx, and he's all like, "Yay, I solved it! What's my prize?" Well, your prize is get to marry the recently widowed queen, and he does. And it turns out that's his mom. And yeah, and so when he finds out, he's all, blinds himself and everything. But it's the same thing. It's like I'm not going to be a pawn of fate. I'm going to take things into my own hands and I'm going to decide what's going to happen to me. And it turns out he walks right into the fate that he was given originally. Which raises the question, right? like I brought up before, are we fated? Is it possible to escape that kind of fate? Um, is is
Well,
fate a real thing, or is it an illusion, or is it tied to our personality,
or your name.
or your
And that's the
name?
thing. Is fate even real? Because when he's a subject to fate, he's driven by fate, bad things happen. When he decides
Mhm.
to take the fate into his own hands, it's not fate, it's he's just the lord of his own destiny. Bad things happen. Worse things maybe
That's what,
happen.
yeah. Yeah.
Either
So what do you do?
way,
Yeah. What do you
right?
do?
It's all Job, right? I mean, or
Uh,
Lot, no, Job, right? Yeah, yeah. Bad things happen.
yeah.
Bad things are happening. The next, all your camels are gone. Your kids get the tent fall on them, and you get you pots.
Exactly.
You got to scrape your scabs with a pot shard. And your
Exactly.
wife says, "Just curse God and keel over dead."
Yeah. And I think I brought this up earlier, is that I think in the unchristened life, it is fate. The only way to escape fate is not to play. And that doesn't mean take things into your own hands and fight fate with fate or fight power with power. It's to accept that what happens to us is actually not fate, but it is providence.
Exactly.
It is somehow the working out of our own improvement, salvation, self-reflection, growth spiritually. But I think the real I've often thought this, it seems like such an awful thing to happen to a guy, Turin, that is,
Mm.
that I always thought, well, should I be sympathetic with this guy? Because he tried to do what he thought was right. He tried to fix things. But what I didn't realize before was that there's never a moment in this story where Turin says, "What's happening to me? God, what are you doing?"
Bingo.
Like happens with the story of Jonah. What are you doing?
Right.
What's going on? Can't you help me, Lord? Can't you help me? Iluvatar, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, that never happens. And I
He
think
never
that's the
once
fatal
actually
flaw.
calls on the gods for help.
Yeah, I think that's the fatal flaw. I've often asked this: what is the fatal flaw of Turin? Is it his pride, his violence, his impetuosity? I think the answer is yes. Um,
But
his
fundamentally, it's the lack of turning to
Yeah,
it's the lack of recognizing his own helplessness and saying, "God, help."
but in a really interesting way, the two are tied together because his personality is such that
Right.
he doesn't have it in him to do that, and so because he doesn't do that, he doesn't have it in him. um, and that then creates another question. Are there people who are born to hang, as Tom Jones was, always said about Tom Jones and Henry Fielding, are there people that are born to hang? Or is everybody capable of this kind of turning of heart, this change of mind, right? And be able to turn to ask for help from the divine? Or is it perspective? It's a really perplexing problem, and that's why you said earlier this story is probably the most complex. I think it's the most complex because it gets at one of the most complex questions of human existence,
Hmm. I
which
think
is
so.
what is the thing at the heart of all the things that happen to us? Is it basically like the bumper sticker poop happens, or is it fate, or is it providence, or can we change it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if
Now,
he has. Yeah, I don't know if he has an answer in this story.
well, we're gonna get to that part. I will say again, I think with what
Set
you've
me
just
up.
laid out in terms of taking fate into your own hands or being subject to fate and or relying on the gods, I think there's something of this illustration between Gondolin and Nargothrond again.
Ah,
Where Gondolin doesn't do bad things, but they maybe just kind of just rely on themselves. And that's why the founder of Gondolin is told, love not too much the works of your own hands, right? That's
yes,
the counsel that's
yes.
given to him. Whereas Nargothrond are told by the gods, you have to just sit tight, stay undercover, keep up the good
Yep.
fight. And then Turin says, open the gates, and then bad things happen, right? That maybe there's something to be more like Nargothrond, and neither like the sons of Feanor's sons who just ride straight into the Balrogs and burn up with wrath, nor be like Gondolin, which has a good thing going but has no reference outside of itself. But maybe Nargothrond might be something there. But here's what we're getting to the climax. So the climax is that leaving temptation to other references like that aside, he takes Niniel as his wife, calling her Niniel, And her right Nienor is actually her name. He calls her Niniel. Doesn't know it's his sister, and he's in Brethil. They're living a good life. They settle down and they have a good life together. Briefly, then Glaurung, then the dragon comes. Glaurung finally makes his way around. He's making the rounds, comes into Brethil like the what do you call him, the sheriff of Nottingham or something, right?
Yeah.
Comes into Brethil Forest, and Turin with two others set out to kill the dragon, right? And he's the only one to get there with the dragon, and with his black sword, iron, blood iron, he stabs Glaurung.
Yeah.
But then he's hurt and he falls in a swoon. Oh. And as Niniel comes out to search for him, so his beloved wife, as the reader knows, turns out to be his sister.
His sister. She
Niniel
is my
comes
sister.
out to search for him. Glaurung, dragon bleeding out. She comes upon the dragon, and the dragon says, "Hey, by the way, you're Turin's sister."
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that to you, that baby in you.
Yeah. And so horrified, she runs off a cliff and kills herself. Sound familiar, right? This kind of comes around to Turin. She runs off, kills herself, throws herself into the foaming, waterfall or whatever it was. I don't remember exact details. Turin wakes up, so she kills herself. Dude sleeping or passed out wakes up and then kills himself. So we've got a Romeo and Juliet thing going on. Anyway, so he wakes up. He's told by Brandir, the lord of the Haladine of Brethil, so the local, lord, what's happened. Okay, so you killed the dragon, Mazel Tov. Your sister, your wife, this is awkward. So Niniel, you're pregnant with your children. She found you. She found the dragon. The dragon then, before he died, his last words were, she's actually your sister, Nienor. Turin says, "No, that's not possible," and then kills Brandir.
Yeah.
Refusing to believe it. When he learns then from Mablung of Doriath, who came to inquire as to his whereabouts, he says, yeah, actually, the Niniel naked girl, that is your sister, Nienor. Brandir was telling the truth. Turin says, "Oh, curses, nothing but curses," and he kills himself by falling on his own black sword.
Yeah.
Which was the same sword that killed his friend, right? Just refashioned, but you get the sort of poeticness of this. Turin was buried then near Findwilas's grave, and on his tombstone, the Haladin, the people of that place, wrote in the Kirth of Doriath, "Turin Turambar Dagnir Glaurunga." They call him Turambar. They say, "Turin, conqueror," this is the gloss, it's written in the text itself. "Turin, conqueror of fate, the slayer of Glaurung." And beneath that, they also wrote, "Nienor Niniel," though her body could not be found. So the very ending of the story is that the people within text seem to indicate that he is a hero, a conqueror of fate somehow, or perhaps that's an ironic title. I don't know.
No.
But remember, the last bit then is, so his name is Turin, coming back to the notion of bull. The modern Anglophone reader reading this, who's any knowledge of Latinate or Greco-Latin languages, we're looking at this the whole time. This is a guy who takes the bull by the horns.
Takes the bull by the horns. Yep.
Right.
He's a bull leaper.
That doesn't go well. That doesn't go well. So don't be like him. Be like Aragorn. But zooming out, this all takes place within a frame of, we don't know if any of it's really true, or that it's at least highly skewed through the particular filter that Morgoth is putting on the lens that he allows.
So it could be Hurin's story. We don't really. Yeah.
This is Hurin's version of the tale, and he's not lying. It's just this is what he was shown. We don't know the details.
Even Turin's words about everything's just curses in my life. I can see that as being his character thinking that about his past life, but it certainly is Hurin's vision, who is far more cursed by the negativity. Morgoth is such a downer, so much negativity, man. Uh,
Mm.
and Huron has been infected by it. And I think that phrase certainly seems to be in the mind of Huron. And yeah, yeah, and yet you wonder, is it possible that Turin had something redemptive in all that he did? Um, that's a big question. It's certainly the whole thing has this operatic quality to it, all
Yes,
these
very
people doing
much.
things suddenly and people dying and people marrying their sisters. It's like opera. It's like Greek tragedy to it.
Yeah.
It's big. It's big. Um,
It is big,
but
and
nobody
it's
ever
great.
stops to reflect. Nobody ever pauses and say, "Hey, maybe I shouldn't throw myself off the cliff," or maybe I shouldn't stab my friend who's trying to rescue me. It's all immediate. It's like, oh, I've got to do this now. Got to do this now, which is kind of the element of tragedy in a way. There's never any moment of slow reflection and find. There's no entishness about
Hmm.
tragedy.
Right. Although, yeah, I mean, even Hamlet is a different because there's a lot of self-reflection in Hamlet.
True,
Yeah.
true.
Um, he's
But he is
obsessed.
impetuous on some things.
Exactly. He doesn't he's not actually reflective. He's intensively what do you say, impetuous,
Yeah.
just sometimes acting outwardly, often turn inwardly, mulling over what
Hmm.
the thing is
Hmm.
to be
Hmm.
done. In other
Hmm.
words, he's justifying and rationalizing
Right.
what he's already resolved to do.
But you see
That's
certainly this
fair.
impetuosity in Romeo and Juliet that you brought up just a minute
Oh, for
ago.
sure.
Things
Yeah.
happen I mean, that play takes place over like 3 days. It's like boom, 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 boom.
Everybody
We meet,
dead.
we're married, we're dead.
Yeah.
It's like Solomon Grundy or something. Um, and I really kind of marvel at that. I think it's part of the element of the story. But then that raises for me the question, why would the elves care? I mean, Tolkien could have made Turin an elf. Why does he make him a human? Does
That's
that
right.
add to the piquancy? Does that add to the
This is the
brevity of time
picaresque
that he
anyway.
has?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have answers to these things. I just ask these questions. And again, I go back
I
to
don't
the
think it
idea,
would have
is there
worked
redemption?
with an elf.
I don't think it would have. I don't think it would have worked with an elf. I think
There's
it's a
not
it's a
that
human story.
there's not that same relationship because there's not the same urgency
Right.
of I've only got X number of years.
Right.
And so I think they're even the rash among the elves have a long time to sit with what they're doing. And so
Yeah,
they operate at a
yeah.
different
The
rhythm,
most rash is
wavelength.
the it's what's his name who created the Silmarils, it seems to
Right.
me.
Yeah. And he just grows in intensity though,
Yeah.
right? There's not this making stupid decisions thing.
No, it's not one darn thing after another for him.
Yeah.
It's
Whereas for the
one darn thing
human,
and then multiplied.
yeah. Um, and I
And I
think,
also,
yeah,
you had brought up the idea earlier that Turin is in some ways like Adam with this curse and also with
yes.
this nobility at the same time. I think that's a pretty apt way of looking at the story because when we look at the fall in Genesis, it's just like crunch and then everybody out of the pool. It's very brief. It's like we don't really get a sense of why this is bad. It's more archetypically bad. But here you get a sense that if this is okay, if you take Turin for a minute as our progenitor, just
Hmm.
as a thought experiment,
Hmm.
then all the stuff that gets him booted out of Eden, that is, his Eve goes and throws herself off a cliff and he throws himself on his black sword, then you can kind of get a sense of how bad the booting out of Eden really was. It's
Yes.
like you're not this little happy child running around with your sister named Laughter anymore. Um,
Right.
yeah, that's
It's
an
so
interesting thought. It's an interesting thought.
But I think it's exactly it because also if you look at what happened, I mean, Adam and Eve, they're kicked out of the garden, right? That's not the bad part. They were scared of the dark. They didn't know how to grow food. There's quotidian issues that are part of the beginning of civilization sort of stories. But God provides stuff. The angels bring things. It's the usual in the ancient tales.
Yeah.
The it really hits the fan when they have children. And not because they have
Yep.
children, but because Cain all of a sudden is a bad guy. Like they raise a kid,
Mhm.
these good people. They have a
Yeah.
kid and he's just bad. Why is he bad? He kills his brother Abel. Before he kills his brother Abel, you know why he kills his brother Abel? He kills his brother Abel because he's jealous. He wanted to marry his sister and so he's supposed to marry Abel's sister because there
And
were
there's
two
a
sets of
it
twins born. Cain
and
had a
there's a
sister and Abel had a sister, and they were supposed to, mix because otherwise it'd be incest.
right.
Well, Cain is like, forget that. I'm marrying my own and I'm going to kill you. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And there's an
and Adam
interesting
and Eve have to
passage.
watch this happen, and they have to bury their own children.
Mm, like Huron and his wife.
That's the tragedy of it. So, like,
Uh,
Turin is kind of like it's the Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel woven into some, woven in, remixed among a couple of characters. But we see this early tragedy that is played out with that. I mean, think he's sort of I would say, let people understand, I know you get it, but the people out there understand. When we say that he's like Adam, it's not only the progenitor of the human race, but the archetype, the everyman. Sort
yes.
of this is the experience of humanity
Right.
summed up in one personage, one character.
And either you believe that, and therefore you're cautious in your actions and hope that you don't commit the same crimes like Aragorn does, or you believe that you don't believe in that story. You believe that we are space dust or descended from apes, or we are just accidentally here on this place, or driven by an evil god, and then you're trying to fix it all the time. You're always trying to improve humanity, genetically
Mhm.
alter it to make the perfect human, take the bull by the horns and fix society, progress towards a great,
Right.
glorious future on Pluto, whatever it is.
Well, yeah, like I
Um,
mean, like Soderman, as we talked about last time, you got to go. He could be a great hero if we wanted to take that. If we wanted to live that story out, Soderman would be the good guy
yeah,
in the Lord of the Rings, right?
yeah,
Make a
yeah, yeah.
hybrid race, bringing together things. It's all hunky dory. Everybody's getting along. We're all calm, cool, and copacetic.
Yep. But as humans, if this is our ancestor, if this
Yeah,
blood is in us,
yeah,
then God help us.
yeah.
It's like maybe
That's
we
just it,
shouldn't be so blithe to think that we are the masters of the universe or the masters of our own fate.
right? But there's a bigger hand at work. And that's where, Aragorn, the movie Aragorn is, I think, trying to catch on to something of this caution. They just
Yeah.
way overplay it
Mm.
in a sort of a modern spinelessness.
Yeah, he make him
Uh,
almost wimpy. Yeah.
right. Whereas he does have a character flaw of being a bit too hesitant, even in the
Mm.
book.
Mm.
But he's aware of that and he is trying to maintain a good balance. It's not so emotional, it's just good judgment. I mean, the guy's in his 80s, right? Um, but he's deeply aware with all of his very human characteristics, like Gollum bit me and I was not kind with him,
Yeah, right.
it recounts back later. But uh, he seems to rely on God's providence. He seems to have
Oh, yeah.
not an understanding, because nobody can claim to have an understanding of the working of providence, but an awareness that there's the great song being
Yes.
played out,
Yes.
playing out.
Yes.
And he's just a part in it. We see a moment of his frustration that all my choices this morning have gone astray, all my decisions have
Hmm.
gone wrong. But he chooses a path, commits to it, and they go,
Yeah. And
recognizing this is beyond. And that's another interesting parallel between him and Turambar. You got Fenduilas and you've got your mom and your sister, right? The
yeah.
dragon gives him a choice. Which one are you going to save? You can't do both. He's got Frodo and Sam in the ring, presumably the safety of the whole world, and Merry and Pippin. Which one of the two you're going to go after? You can't do both.
Yep. 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 Yeah, that's an interesting parallel. And another interesting parallel, which is the parallel of the songs that they sing. We don't get an
Yeah.
actual copy of the Lament for Beleg that Turin sings, but I think it's the only song that they say he sings throughout the whole story, which is this lament.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's more a lament about not just poor Beleg, but oh, poor me, that I was involved in his death. That I think in some ways is a parallel to the songs, because there are a few, but the major song that we see Aragorn singing is actually there at right before they're attacked by the Nazgul there at the oh, what is that? I forget the name of the place, but he sings to them to the hobbits the Beren and Luthien song,
Yes.
which is an interesting parallel. That's Aragorn's reflection, is that he keeps his eye on that nobility of Beren and Luthien and how they were able to accomplish things because they worked together and they relied on the divinities. He doesn't think, oh, he doesn't sing a song about, oh, poor Aragorn and I'm away from my gal and I'm lonely. He doesn't sing that.
Right. And he identifies him, and it's important. This is the powerful magic behind this. As we learned from Tom Bombadil, if we have the patience for the lesson,
Yeah.
is that he aligns himself, he identifies himself with Beren. He could just easily identify himself with Turin or somebody else.
Yeah, right.
He identifies himself with Beren, and that itself has some sort of power. That does a thing. That's a magic spell.
It does. Yeah.
And I
Which
think,
isn't, yeah.
oh yeah, just to close it off, the question of to Turin, right? To not leave his fate sort of completely, bad, is that in the Council of Elrond, right? Bilbo or Frodo, right? Frodo is commended for being among the great heroes.
Yeah.
He's told that if you take it freely, I will say that your choice is right. And though all the mighty elf friends of old, Hador and Húrin and Turin and Beren himself were assembled together, your seat should be among them.
Mm.
So by Elrond, Turin is named as one of the great heroes and elf friends of old. And Turin is the name, as we see later in The Lord of the Rings, is the name of the constellation that we today call Orion. So he's been placed in the heavens.
Well, I would like to think that there was some redemption for Turin, and I think maybe I'll go with that. Nice place to end it to say, amidst all that crud, maybe there was a chance for him to have achieved salvation of some sort. Maybe what we saw is just his father's splintered vision.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm going to end it on that. Maybe Turin did find salvation at some point, and that's why we call him hero instead of cursed.
Right.
Okay, I'll go with that.
I'd like to think that's the case.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, sir. It's been a good discussion. I appreciate it. We'll meet again next week.